Okay, so for your review guide here, I'm not going to work through every single problem on this thing. I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit because some of them are pretty similar, but I'll try to work through the majority of them. So if you need to, feel free to pause the video, back up, figure out where that step came from. And if you can't figure it out through the video, you can send me an email or you can always come in outside of class to figure these out. All right, the test will look fairly similar to a lot of these problems, so if you do the review guide, feel good about that, then you should do fairly well on the test. So starting out, these linear equations, I'm going to do A and I'm going to do B here. All right, because those are the two that are kind of similar to C and D. So for A, you just want to distribute those numbers in front. 5x minus 25 equals 3x plus 3. And now we want to combine like terms. So we have to move the x's on one side, move the numbers to the other. So we're going to move the x's to the left. And that's going to give me a 2x. And then we're going to move the number, that 25, to the right. Okay? And then we will get 25 plus 3, which is 28. Okay? So now we divide, because we're going to do inverse. Okay? Divide by 2, x is going to be 14. All right? So that's the first one. For number 2, you can use the fractions, just kind of move fractions around, but remember that trick that we showed you in class, where you look at our denominators here, the 4 and the 3, and you want to multiply the whole equation by a common denominator. So my common denominator between 4 and 3 would be a 12, okay? And you can think of cross-canceling if you want to, or you can just kind of multiply the 12 by all the numbers on top and then simplify it from there. So it would be like 12 fourths t, because we're just multiplying across the top, equals, and 7 times 12, that would be 84, and then minus 24 over 3t, and then you simplify that down. So 12 divided by 4 is a, I'll make that arrow a little bit different so you can see that I'm going from one step to the other. 12 divided by 4 is 3t equals 84, and then 24 divided by 3, that's an 8, so minus 8t. So we got to move the t's to the left again, or the variables to the left. So we want to add 8t, gives me 11t over here, and I have 84 on the right. Divide by 11, and you get t equals 84 over 11. Kind of an ugly fraction, but that's the way it works out. Okay? Down here for number 2 and 3, we'll work through both of those. Okay? So number 2, we're solving for y, and you can kind of see one there and there. So remember there was a trick to getting those out. If we have 2 y's in there, a y in 2 separate terms, you're going to have to factor it out. So that was like our reverse distributive property stuff. So the y goes in front, and we have a 4x plus 2 that's left in the parentheses. Just like that. Okay? Now we have the 4x plus 2, that's that group. We can divide that whole group from both sides. And that will cancel from there. And we get y equals 3 over 4x plus 2. That is your answer. Okay, remember those are called the equation literal, kind of when you're solving for a different variable when there are several in an equation. So in the second one, we're solving for x, which is up there. All right, so we got to move the 12 first. So we want to get that variable by itself. So we'll have p minus 12 on the left-hand side equal to negative x over 1,000. Okay, so now the things we're looking at here are both the negative and the 1,000. We got to figure out how to get rid of those. Okay, so we can multiply both sides by a negative to get rid of the negative there, and we can multiply both sides by a negative 1,000. So take everything times the negative 1,000 to get rid of that down there. So it's negative 1,000 p plus 12,000 equals x. And if you wanted to make it look a little bit nicer with the x on the left, you can rewrite it. It doesn't necessarily matter. So x equals negative 1,000 p plus 12,000. And that is your rewritten equation. Okay, so down below here, we got inequalities. We'll work through all these. So for 4a, the First thing you want to do is distribute. So that gives me 3x plus 4 is less than, I think it's a less than, I can't tell if it's a less than or equal to. Is less than or equal to. It's kind of hard to see that on the screen here. Less than or equal to 14x minus 35. Now let's put the variables on the left and the numbers on the right again. So minus 14x, that's going to give me a negative 11x, I mean minus 4 from both sides. So it's less than or equal to a negative 39. So now we're going to have to divide by a negative 11. And you have to remember what we got to do when we're dividing by a negative. That's going to flip my sign here. So x is greater than or equal to 39/11. And then we need to graph it. So that's the way I want the answer written. When you're graphing this, you can kind of think of it as a mixed number. So 11 goes into 39 3 times. So that would give me 33. So there'd be 6/11 left. So it'd be 3 6/11. So that's about 3.5. So I would do 0, 1, 2, 3. Right, so 3.5, a little bit more than that. So we are here, and we are going greater than, so that's to the right. So that's your solution for that one, answer and graph. B, we're solving two things here. So we see the or, so we have to solve two separate inequalities. So add 4, let's do the first one on the left here. So that's greater than 6, divide by 3. X is greater than 6/3, which is 2. So that's one of them. Or, so let's do the other one. Minus 7. We got 4x is less than a negative 2. Divide by 4. So it's x is less than negative 1/2. And we graph these. And so remember, when you see an or, most of the time they're going to be pointing away from each other. So when you graph these, if they point towards each other, then it would be all real numbers. But these ones look like they're going to be pointing away from each other. So x is greater than 2 is here, and x is less than negative 1/2, that's here. So that's your solution for that one. You have an or inequality. For C, we haven't done a lot of these, but just kind of think of if we had half of that covered up. Okay, so if we had something like that, then we would just solve it like normal. But since we have the whole thing here, you're going to have to solve using both sides. So we would subtract 7 from both sides. You get a negative 11 over there. We have a 3x less than or equal to, and over here, when we do 4 minus 7 is a negative 3. Now, if we divide the 3 out, we're going to have to take that out of everything. Okay? And I'm going to be kind of picky on the test. I want you to leave this as negative 11/3 here. Okay? So it looks like this, negative 11/3 less than x less than or equal to negative 1. Now when you read this thing, I read it kind of goofy, but you always start from the variable. So I would say x is greater than or equal to, or greater than negative 11/3, and x is less than negative 1. That's how you read that. Okay? So when we graph it, let's put a 0 over here, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So negative 11/3, that's like 3 2/3. So that's going to be around here. And then a negative 1 is here. And we're just going to go everything in between. Okay? So you're going to graph everything in between there. And then I needed to shade that one in because that is a less than or equal to on the right-hand side there. So D, that's an absolute value inequality, right? Notice the absolute value brackets. So that means we're going to have to make two equations or two inequalities here. But the first thing we have to do is get rid of that. So 1/4 is the fraction. To get rid of the fraction, you divide by 1/4, or a better way to say it would be multiply by its reciprocal. So multiply both sides times 4. And that'll just cancel out that fraction there, and we're left with 7x plus 5 greater than or equal to 40. Okay? From there, we make our two equations. So you just leave the first one as it is, 7x plus 5 greater than or equal to 40. And then remember, we make our other one where we have opposite signs. So we have 7x plus 5. We flip this sign, and we change that to a negative 40. Okay? And this is going to be an or inequality because we're starting with greater than. Right, greater. So solve those two. So minus 5 on both of them. And then you'll get 7x is greater than or equal to 35. On that first one, 7x is less than or equal to negative 45. And we can solve it from there. Okay? So subtract 5, we got a 35, so we're going to have x is greater than or equal to 35 divided by 7 is 5. Right? Divide by 7, divide by 7, divide by 7, divide by 7. Okay? And then we're going to have x is less than or equal to 45 sevenths. Negative 45 sevenths. Okay, we need that to be a negative 45 sevenths. And then we graph them. So this is an OR. So remember, ORs are going to be the ones that kind of point opposite directions when we graph them. So hopefully when we graph these, they look like that. So when we graph the 45 sevenths, you're going to have to kind of think of that as a decimal or a mixed number. So that's like 6 and 3/7. All right. So let's graph them. So I have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because we need that negative 6 and 3/7. So 6 and 3/7 will be about here, and it's less than, so we're going that way. Okay, so I'll write that negative 45 sevenths there, and then 5, and we're going to the right because it's greater than. So that's how we would graph that one. Okay? So that is how we do those inequalities and those absolute value inequalities as well. So, jumping on to the next page here. We want to change the slope-intercept form to graph the following equations or inequalities. All right? So, number 5, we'll just do a couple of these. All right? Number 8, that's going to be an absolute value, so it looks like a V. All right? I'll help you with one of those. I'll probably skip the next one, though. So, number 5, we want to change the slope-intercept form. So, that's y equals mx plus b. So, we have to solve for y. So, let's move the 2/3 x over. So, then we have 4/3 y equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. Now we got to get rid of that 4/3. So we want to multiply both sides by its reciprocal. So we can take everything times 3/4. Okay, take each of these times 3/4. So the reason being, you're going to cancel this one out when we multiply by 3/4. So we'll have y equals, and then if we do a little bit of fraction stuff, let's do it over here. 3/4 times 2/3, negative 2/3. 3's are going to cancel. So then we got cross cancel there. That's a 1, that's a 2, so it's a negative 1/2. Okay, so negative 1/2 x, and then 3/4 times a 6. That's times 6 over 1, cross cancel. You get 9 over 2. So plus 9 over 2. So that is our slope-intercept form. And then you're like, well, how do I graph 9 over 2? Okay, I want you to have it as 9 over 2, but when you graph it, you can kind of think of a decimal or a mixed number. Okay, so that's 4.5, which is right about here. Okay, so then from there you go down 1 over 2, which is our slope. So we go down 1 over 2. So we're there, down 1 over 2, right? So right there is going to be the line. So that's it. So number 6 is a little bit easier because we don't have any fractions, but we'll get some in the end. So move the 3x over. We get 2y equals negative 3x plus 5. Okay, and you always want to kind of put that x first because you want it like mx plus b. I don't want to divide everything by 2. So we cancel that out there. You get y equals negative 3/2 x. I'm going to run into my work here, so I'm going to get that out of the way. Negative 3/2 x plus 5/2. So again, think of that as a decimal. That's 2.5. All right, so that's your starting point. Start at 2.5. We go down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 2, right there, down 3, over 2, right there, and draw your line. And there we have it. So the one thing that you're going to have to do on number 7 is you're going to have to distribute the 1/2 and then add the 2 over there, and then you'll get your slope-intercept form. Okay? And it is an inequality, so I better do it just so we can see how to shade. So when I distribute, I'll have y minus 2 is less than 1/2 x plus 3/2. Add the 2, like I said. So 3/2 plus 2 is 5/2. With a little bit of calculator work or fraction work, you can get that. Okay? And remember, you only need to flip the sign if you multiply or divide by a negative, which we didn't do, so that stays the same. So I'm starting at 2.5 again, up here, and I'm going up 1 over 2, right there, up 1 over 2. Okay? And now we have to remember if it's a dashed or solid. Since there is no equal to, this is dashed. Okay? It's like an open line, if you will. Okay? The equal to sign would mean it would be a closed in or filled in line. So this one would be dashed. And then you just put your arrows on the end there. Okay? And less than. So think of things that are less than my line. That would be everything that is down from the line or below the line. Okay? Number 8. That's your absolute value equation, or inequality rather. So every time we did these things in class so far, we've done probably 3 or 4 of them. We're going to make an XY chart, okay? And before we did our generic points, so -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Those were our magic points for these things. But you're going to see that it doesn't actually give you what you're looking for. So you're going to have to do more points. And actually, you'd have to do more negatives here. So the easy way here is look what is inside your absolute value. We have the x plus 4. We set it equal to 0, and then solve. So you get x equals -4. So that is going to be where my vertex is, which is in the middle of the graph. So I'm going to put that in the middle of my XY chart and do points around it. Just like that. Okay, so when I put these things in here, I'll show you what it looks like with just a couple of them. So when I put a -6 in there, looks like that. So I would get -6 plus 4 inside there, so it has a -2, but that's in the absolute value. So remember, absolute value turn things positive, so really we have -2 times 2, which is a -4. Okay, so let's do it with the -5. So -5 inside there. Absolute value with my -2 in front. So this would give me a -1 inside there, but remember it turns back positive. So we have a -2 for that point. And then it's going to kind of follow a pattern. So the -4 would give you a 0. And then when you put the -3 in there, you're going to see it's going to give you a -2 again. And then that is enough information to graph it. So -4, 0 is your vertex, and you got your other points around there. And then it's a greater than or equal to, so it's a solid line going in both directions. And greater than means everything above. So we do everything above my V shape. So it looks like that. I don't have one of those on this test. There will be some coming up on the next test, but it's good practice just so you know how to do them. All right, all the way down at the bottom, we'll just do a couple of these. So 9, the line goes through those points right there. So we need to remember slope formula. So it's y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So it's -6 minus 4, and then a 2 minus a -3. That's going to give me a -10 over, double negative gives you positives, over 5. So our slope is -2. That's nice. Fractions make it a little more complicated. So the 2 ways that we can do this, the one way I prefer is just use point slope. We can use slope intercept and solve for b, but I like to do point slope better. And let's just say we're going to use this point right here. So it's y minus 4 equals -2, x plus 3. So that's my point slope form. I want slope intercept, people. All right, slope-intercept form. So we need to distribute the -2 and then move the 4 over, just like we kind of did up above. So that'll give me y equals -2x minus 6 plus 4, because I just moved that 4 over there. So y equals -2x minus 2. That's your equation. Okay? Now, number 10, I'm going to show you the other way that we could have solved it. So using y equals mx plus b. So in the problem, the way number 10 is written, you have an x, a y, and an m. So you'd have to plug them all in to solve for b. So my y is a -3. My slope is 3/4. My x is -2. And I do not know b. So then you just do a little bit of math here to figure it out. So cross cancel, that's like 2 over 1. So that turns into a 2, that turns into a 1. So we get a -3/2. All right, so continue up here. -3 equals -3/2 plus b. So we got to add that 3/2 there to both sides to get my b. So -3 plus 3/2. I'm not going to do number 12, so I'll do my work down here. So that's like -3 over 1 plus 3 over 2. Get a common denominator. So when I do, this one turns into 6/2. Right? So it's -6/2 plus 3/2. That gives you a -3/2. That is b. Now the last step is just putting everything back in your equation. So we know our slope is 3/4. And we know our y or b or y-intercept is a -3/2. So that is your answer. Okay. Number 11 here. Horizontal line through 2,4. The best way to figure this out is draw yourself a little graph. The best way to think about it, I suppose. So 2,4 is here, and just think of that line going through here. And some of you guys can figure it out. So the only axis it runs into, y-axis, that's where it hits. Where does it hit the y-axis at? Well, it hits at 4. So y equals 4 is the equation of a horizontal line that goes through 2,4. Okay, it's easy as that. Right? Y equals go sideways, they go horizontal.